Fitness has always been a huge part of my life, so whenever there's interesting content that I may come across, I always like to tune in to see, what other perspectives there are that I can go ahead and consider to implement. So I haven't gotten a chance to watch this entire clip, but I thought I'd share my thoughts and insight here.
There are a lot of reasons to want to get stronger, and I should just mention that it's not always the case that getting stronger involves muscles getting bigger. There are ways for muscles to get stronger without getting bigger. However, increasing the size of a muscle almost inevitably increases the strength of that muscle, at least to some degree. Reasons why most everyone should want to get their muscles stronger is that muscles are generally getting progressively weaker across the lifespan. So when I say getting stronger, it's not necessarily about being able to move increasing amounts of weight in the gym, although if that's your goal, what I'm about to discuss will be relevant to that, but rather to offset some of the normal decline in strength and posture and the ability to generate a large range of movement safely that occurs as we age. We just tend to lose function in this neuromuscular system as we get older, and doing things to offset that has been shown again and again to be beneficial for the neuromuscular system, for protection of injury, for enhancing the strength of bones and bone density. So there are a lot of reasons to use resistance exercise that extend far beyond just the desire to increase muscle size. Because I know many of you are interested in increasing muscle size, but many of you are not. You have to go to failure or beyond in order to stimulate growth. Why does it work at such a great range of repetitions? Well, there apparently are three ways that you stimulate hypertrophy, and maybe more. One is tissue microdamage to the tissue. The other is through some sort of tension-based changes in the molecular gene programs of cells that lead to protein synthesis that are distinct from damage. And the other are metabolic effects of like high repetition work of superfusion of the muscle with blood. We know that third category exists because people are now doing this blood restriction training where they cuff off a muscle and they'll use a really light weight. I've done these before. You can use a 5-pound weight and do curls with this, and you are in pain and the muscles are swelling up with blood. It does lead to hypertrophy, but in general, you're not sore, you're not doing tissue damage. And by the way, don't just tourniquet off a muscle because you have to use the proper cuffs because you need the blood still to flow in one direction. You can't just cinch it off, or you'll potentially kill yourself if you get a clot or you do it wrong. So there's an important principle of muscle.
So I have heard of this type of training. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I think it's called ocular training or something like that. I didn't know you could actually die from that. What? That's all the more reason to not want to try that. I thought it was a gimmick, but he's saying that you could actually build muscle. I've never tried it. I don't think that's something that I have ever really considered. And the fact that he mentioned that you could potentially also, no, I think I'm okay. I'll pass on that one.
Physiology called the Henneman size principle. And the Henneman size principle essentially says that we recruit what are called motor units. Motor units are just the connections between nerve and muscle in a pattern that staircases from low threshold to high threshold. What this means is when you pick up something that is light, you're going to use the minimum amount of nerve to muscle energy in order to move that thing. Likewise, when you pick up an object that's heavy, you're going to use the minimum amount of nerve to muscle connectivity and energy in order to move that object. So it's basically a conservation of energy principle. Now, if you continue to exert effort of movement, what will happen is you will tend to recruit more and more motor units with time. And that process of recruiting more neurons, more lower motor neurons, as if you recall from the beginning of the episode, these lower motor neurons are in our spinal cord and they actually dump a chemical, acetylcholine, on muscle, cause the muscles to contract. As you recruit more and more of these motor units, these connections between these lower motor neurons and muscle, that's when you start to get changes in the muscle. That's when you open the gate for the potential for the muscles to get stronger and to get larger, if that's what your goal is. And so the way this process works has been badly misunderstood in the kind of online literature of weight training and bodybuilding and even in sports physiology. The Henneman size principle is kind of a foundational principle within muscle physiology. But many people have come to interpret it by saying that the way to recruit high threshold motor units, the ones that are hard to get to, is to just use heavy weights. And that's actually not the case. As we'll talk about, the research supports that weights in a very large range of sort of percentage of your maximum, anywhere from 30 to 80%. So weights that are not very light but are moderately light to heavy can cause changes in the connections between nerve and muscle that lead to muscle strength and muscle hypertrophy. Pick 3 exercises, compound exercises, multi-joint movements. Do 3 to 5 exercises for 3 to 5 repetitions per set. Rest 3 to 5 minutes and do that 3 to 5 times per week. What's interesting about this is 3 to 5 times a week is a lot for a muscle group. Squatting 5 times a week for 5 reps, meaning you're working pretty heavy, meaning you're close to failure but not failure for strength generally. Heavy weights can help build muscle and strength, but they are not required. What one has to do is adhere to a certain number of parameters, just a couple of key variables that I'll spell out for you. And if you do that, you can greatly increase muscle hypertrophy, muscle size, and or muscle strength if that's what you want to do. And you don't necessarily have to use heavy weights in order to do that. People who are training mostly for strength can do these low rep type regimens frequently because most of the adaptation is neural. And because you're not pushing to failure in most cases, you don't get that sore. And so it's the motor neurons getting the muscle fibers to contract more intensely or with more efficiency in other ways that's leading to these strength gains. And this is why powerlifters can train every day or 5 days a week or 4 days a week. Now, I'm sure the powerlifters and the people that like to move heavy weights around will say, no, if you want to get strong, you absolutely have to lift heavy weights. And that might be true if you want to get very strong. But for most people who are interested in supporting their muscular such that they offset any age-related decline in strength or in increasing hypertrophy and strength to some degree, there really isn't a need to lie about the Henneman size principle, which many people out there are doing, and claiming that you absolutely need to use the heaviest weights possible in order to build strength and muscle. And then for endurance, I learned something really cool. So I work out, basically, I go to the gym every other day on average. 3 or 4 days a week I do that, but generally not 2 days in a row. It's workout, next day I'll do cardio, next day. And the cardio for me is always a 30 to 45 minute jog, kind of zone 2 cardio. Build endurance while building strength and maintaining some muscle size or even building muscle size. I would be wise to take 1 day a week and add to that all out max heart rate work for 90 seconds at least. So do 90 seconds, then rest, and then maybe do another 90-second all out sprint. So you're not gonna get really good at anything. You're not gonna become a marathoner this way, an optimizing marathon. You're not gonna optimize powerlifting. You're not gonna optimize hypertrophy. But for the typical person, 75% of people, 75% of the time, they want some muscle, they want some strength, they want some endurance, and they want the capacity to sprint to the security gate without leaving a lung in the terminal.
Okay, you guys, so definitely a lot to take in. I started working out when I was my early teens, so over that time I've tried many different things. I've tried many different diets, training programs, supplements, and even for someone like me who has made fitness a huge part of his life, I feel that this overcomplicates things. What I've come to learn over time through my experience is that if you're looking to build strength, And I think at one point in the video, he had mentioned that he does agree that you do need heavy weights or to lift heavy weights to become freakishly strong, but that you also don't need it. If you're lifting weights, if you're working out and you're consistently working out, you're going to get stronger. It's kind of like saying, well, it's better to exercise and lift weights than to do nothing at all. If you don't do anything at all, you are not going to increase in strength or muscle size, or really your body composition is not going to change. But I think that the video, especially if I were to come in brand new to fitness and I stumbled across this video, for example, for the very first time, I would still be confused because there's a lot of information here. And something that I've always helped with letting, if someone were to ask me, what do you think about, what I should start with? What should I be lifting for my size, height, body weight, all these different parameters or differences, right? The first thing that I would always recommend that you do is to just consider walking, right? If there's nothing that you do, or if you don't know where to start, where to begin, walking is phenomenal exercise. Walking will definitely help with your overall body composition to become more efficient in utilizing oxygen. Your lungs will get stronger, your body will get stronger, your bones, your joints. And I used to shun walking myself, and it has a lot to do with having a sort of athletic background. I have been playing soccer since I was 5 years old. So for me, I never really looked at walking as a form of exercise, really, just because it seemed like it's really easy. And I think that's my neuroticism that really took, over. But, over the course of time, something that I've implemented recently into my overall regimen is walking at least an hour a day, or if I can't do that, 30 minutes every day or every other day, something that I can consistently do. And that has definitely changed my life. It has given me the time to become wiser, because those walks tend to, at least in my experience, really help with creativity. I'm able to think about any challenges that I might be going through or be present in my life, find solutions. And as a business owner, has really helped with just looking for methods to, or opportunities, really, opportunities to just become successful, right? Whatever my goal is, it gives me the time because I'm dedicating a certain amount of time and it's low intensity. And I'm able to really think. And if you're outside, if the weather permits, then you're in nature, right? You're stimulating your mind, right? You're moving your body as well. And, that has been just life-changing. So I would always recommend it, first and foremost. It has definitely changed my life, for sure. I wish that I had implemented it way sooner. But something that I've learned over, the course of my lifetime, working out for nearly 2 decades now, is that it really boils down to what your goal is. And the weights are essentially your tools, right? And you have parameters that you can go ahead and follow to get to that point. So without overcomplicating, things, essentially, if you're interested in hypertrophy, building muscle, right? Just think of bodybuilders. Your program should really focus on the body parts that you want to go ahead and build to grow. You want to isolate those body parts. You want to focus your energy, your everything, from your central nervous system, right? You want to have all of your energy flow to the body part that you're focusing on, that you would like to grow, and really put in that effort. Drive your system, your nervous system, to drive as much energy into the muscle that you're focusing on. And the weights typically are going to be they're going to be lighter weights, because you're not necessarily focused on building strength. You're focused on building the muscle, breaking it down, really tearing it, and then the recovery process to go ahead and build. And once it's recovered, it'll get bigger. And essentially what you're doing is you're becoming more efficient, or your body's becoming more efficient at that exercise. You're taking a weight and you're really repping just that weight as much as you possibly can. 10, 15, 20 reps. It really is up to you and what you could do. But if you're building strength, you're really just focusing on the body parts that you want to focus on to build, right? So typically chest, biceps, triceps, your quads, hamstrings, calves. And you want to use exercises that isolate those muscle groups. That's key, to isolate. You want to tackle or attack those muscle groups. You're going to be taking an exercise and focusing on one specific muscle group. And it's very specific. If you want to focus on the biceps, there are a lot of different exercises you can use for biceps. You can use a barbell curl, dumbbell curl, pull-ups, any rowing exercise that you have a barbell for. They're going to use the biceps in the movement, but if you're bodybuilding, you're going to go ahead and use whatever exercises are really going to focus and target it. Now, I can go into a whole nother video in regards to, what exercises might be the most efficient and where you'll get the most bang for your buck, but I'll leave that for another time. So again, if you're focused on bodybuilding, building the muscle, hypertrophy, essentially what you're doing is you want to pick a weight. You can go ahead and focus and zero in on that muscle group. And typically for those types of exercises, they're going to have to be lower weight. I don't know about you, but I don't know who can probably, besides maybe Ronnie Coleman, right? Who can start, with single arm dumbbell curls for 10, 20 reps using a 100-pound dumbbell. I mean, no. On the other end of the spectrum, before I go there, so with hypertrophy, your central nervous system is really not being taxed. You can go ahead and grab a barbell or a dumbbell and do a lot of reps for a certain amount of weight and really focus on that muscle. For example, if you grab 20-pound dumbbells, you could probably, rep 10, 15, 20 reps, depending on your strength, your fitness. It really depends, right? But that is not going to be too taxing. You can really focus and just essentially trash the muscle, but your central nervous system is not going to get taxed. In other words, you can probably get away with lifting and focusing on those specific muscle groups 3 to 5 times a week, typically. And obviously your diet is typically going to be higher in protein. Your carbs and your fats are going to be, relatively around the same carbohydrates or something that you can go ahead and manipulate, if you want to be in a caloric surplus. But really high protein for sure. And something that I've come to learn too is that, again, because you're not really engaging the central nervous system, where the goal isn't to build muscle, the goal is to push or lift a huge amount of weight, your central nervous system is going to get taxed a lot more with pushing heavier weight. Regardless, doesn't matter who you are, right? You're driving more energy. It takes a lot more energy for you to do a 500-pound deadlift than it is for you to do 10 reps of 135, for example. It's complete night and day difference. On the other end of the spectrum, though, if you're focused on getting stronger, just strength, pure strength, raw power, typically your regimen, your exercise regimen, is gonna include heavy weights, low amount of reps, and your rest times are gonna be significantly higher, right? I don't think there's a lot of people who can bench 500 pounds or deadlift 500 pounds for just reps and make it look easy. Again, besides Ronnie Coleman, maybe, right? But no, it takes a lot of strength, a lot of energy, and that comes from the central nervous system. And something that I want to go ahead and add, what I've learned too, is that with the central nervous system, it really is about your body's ability to generate strength quick, power. And that can only become more efficient through strength training, really depending on what your goal is. Because the energy required for you to lift heavy amount of weight is significantly higher, it's a lot more taxing. Your central nervous system is going to get taxed a lot more than if you were just lifting for reps to bodybuild. Now, I'm not saying that one program is better than the other, or that, one is inherently, tougher than the other, because I've tried both. And I can say that, at least from my experience, because I'm at a point where I'm really just focused on building a powerful physique, a powerful looking body. If the muscle comes, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay. But the reason I got into fitness was really because I wanted to be healthy and I wanted a strong looking, fit body. That's it. And again, from the hypertrophy point of view, bodybuilding, I've tried that, and I've had some tough workouts where I was not really enjoying it. It was really trashing my body part, really trashing a certain muscle group, resting a low amount of times, and then going again. And then for the next set, and then for the next set. And that is taxing too. But I mean, there's a lot more pain. And I think, Arnie has said before too, that if you can't pass, or that the champions are the ones who could really pass through that pain barrier. And again, it's tough. It's tough. On the other end of the spectrum, when it comes to strength training, for example, with heavier weights, low reps, I've tried that. And again, it's tough as well, but the rest times associated with it are a lot higher. In other words, if I'm lifting or pressing a good amount of weight, heavy weight, the rest times could be anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes or even longer, because you're not really focused. Your primary concern isn't with, you want to build the muscle, you don't want it to get bigger. That's not your focus. Your focus, if you're working out for strength, if you're strength training and strength power, if that's your goal, then essentially what you're doing is you're lifting heavy weight so that you become more efficient at lifting that weight, and generating that amount of power. Training your central nervous system to recognize the pattern and driving as much energy as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible through all of the system, throughout the entire central nervous system, to produce that strength, power, and lift that weight. If you build muscle, which does come along with you getting stronger, if you build muscle, great, but that's not your primary concern. And again, the rest times are typically a lot higher, right? Or a lot longer. You're resting 3, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 10, it doesn't matter. You're not even focused on how long you're resting because you don't care about building muscle. But if you're focused on building muscle, you want to ensure to continue to have that time under tension, right? But yeah, with strength training, essentially, no, you're training your central nervous system, and you're not focused with building the muscle. And typically, you know, those exercises are going to be compound exercises. So you're training. Not only are you not focusing on single muscle groups, you're focusing on lifts that are compound lifts, and these are working many different body parts. You have, for example, the deadlift, bench press if you want, the squat. Those are pretty much the 3 major lifts. And with the deadlift, something that I'm so happy to come across at an early point, deadlift works your entire body. Squat primarily it works your, if I'm not mistaken, your hamstrings and your glutes. But the glutes tend to be lazy when we lift that, so primarily the glutes. And then obviously it helps with strengthening the back, but the quads themselves, I think they're pretty much a byproduct, or you know, you're working them passively. The majority of the work is coming from the hamstrings, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's the case. And with the bench press, obviously, you know, you're working your chest, but I believe that over time I've come to learn that the bench press is definitely, yes, working the chest, but there are also other body parts that come into play. For example, your delts, and depending on how you're performing the lift, you know, other muscle groups are engaged. Obviously you have your stabilizers as well. But yeah, so, and again, this video is already getting pretty long, but there's just so much. So not to overcomplicate things, it really depends on your goal, right? The diet that's associated with the training as well is definitely going to matter, and the amount of rest as well. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering your central nervous system's ability to perform at a high level output, right? If you're really taxing your body, your central nervous system is going to get fried. That's another thing too that I wanted to add. If you're lifting considerable amounts of weights, if you're lifting 500, 1,000 pounds, whatever it is that, you know, that you may be able to do, you cannot sustain that every single day, 3 to 5 times a week. You know, if I'm not mistaken, I think a lot of people who are focused on, who primarily focus on strength building, they might do 3 to 4 times a week max. I believe that they have about a day or 2 days rest at least. And as far as going all out, maxing out, I highly doubt that a lot of people have the ability to do that. But definitely, so something to keep in mind. And if you're interested in knowing more or learning a little bit more, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to provide further insight and do another video like this and just provide my thoughts. Again, fitness has been a huge aspect of my life, and it has definitely changed everything for me in a positive way. And really, it has also helped me with not just looking and feeling better, but the confidence that comes along with it. You feel a lot more confident and secure because you know you're fit, because you know that you can protect yourself, because you know that you're healthy, and you just feel that, right? And I think it's important, if you don't have a workout regimen already in place, please let me know. If you need some assistance, I'd be more than happy to help. But walking, right? Walking. If you don't know where to start, you can go ahead and then work on developing a program at a later time. But definitely walk. So everything will be listed below. If you could do me the huge favor of sharing and following, provide your thoughts down below. I'd really appreciate it. I do look forward to producing more content. And as always, my main priority is to bring valuable content, valuable information. And so please reach out. Everything will be listed down below. I look forward to making more of these videos, and till next time.